find your passion, it ignites you as a person. You just feel awesome. Hello, what is going on? All right, so one of our Jiu Jitsu sisters asks, how frequently did I train when I first started and how much do I train now? But what she's really asking is, how much should you train as a beginner in Jiu Jitsu, and how do you figure out the frequency? Because that's always going to actually change over time, and it's never going to be a set point because everybody's different and everybody's like life stresses is different at that moment. But we're gonna go over exactly how to figure it out, all right? Watch out. All right, can you see that? All right, so when I first started, there was an on-ramp program. So what that on-ramp program consisted of was basically an hour, twice a week of class, but the class was kind of like dumbed down to the version of like, all right, this is how you take somebody's back, this is how you rear naked choke, and this is how you do the warm-ups. So you can actually go to the normal class and can complete the warm-up. So believe it or not, as a beginner, you are going to feel sore just from class. So in the beginning, I was doing class on Tuesdays and class on Thursdays. No, I'm kidding. All right. So class. Can you see that? All right. So I was doing class twice a week and I was sore. After the on-ramp program was finished, I continued to do class twice a week for a couple of weeks until I wanted to start rolling. So I remember I tried rolling, right? And it, as a beginner, was very scary. It caused me to be so fucking sore that I was just like, once I tried it, I would literally go to class and try to get out of rolling because of how intense it was and how hard it was and scary, just like emotionally and physically. So instead, what I did is I started drilling. So drilling is basically like what you do in class. It is practicing the techniques with zero resistance and zero duress. So instead of rolling, I would basically, you know, drill a couple of times a week. So instead of this, I basically would take 2 classes and then I would drill like in the mornings or right before class. So drilling basically is like that. This is the intensity. All right. And I remember trying to get into rolling, and Eli was a brown belt at that time, and he was like, Crystal, you know, like if you train hard, you need to recover hard, because even doing this, I was so sore. And coming from, all right, my background, I, you know, was a dive master. I was an ice climber, rock climber. I had just, you know, completed doing like competitive bodybuilding shows. So it's not like I was off the couch, right? In my mind, I was like, dude, I'm athletic, I'm sore. Like never in my life had I ever had to like put in extra recovery time, but jiu-jitsu is like no other animal, okay? Like you're actually, this is what I learned. I was like, all right, well, what is Eli doing? Okay, Eli was going to a chiropractor. Eli was, can you see that? Eli was going to a float tank. Eli was doing things for recovery. This is recovery, and this would be stress. So Eli's chart of intensity had green here, right? So let's say he trained the same amount of intensity as me. Like, he was offsetting and balancing everything by getting recovery, which I wasn't, okay? So I learned from Eli. I got myself a little foam roller, and I started stretching during class while the technique was being shown. That way I could like get in the recovery during the same time period as I was getting in the damage. That way it wasn't as much work. Okay. So then from there, I was like, it was becoming an issue because like I needed to start rolling, right? This is going to be like one of the first issues that you face is like, how can I overcome this soreness in order to roll? And how can I like physically, mentally, and emotionally break into rolling? So the first thing in order for you to do this is you need to get your recovery game on point. I had an ego about it. I was like, I'm an athletic person. Like, who foam rolls on the off and stretches? Like, really? But really, like when I went to the gym, I needed to spend more time actively stretching, which before I never had to do, right? So I would actually, let's see, what's the color we haven't used? You have lifting. So then pretty soon what my training looked like was I would take class 2 to 3 times a week. And then I would be rolling for at least a couple of rounds after each class. Like, that was my goal. And I remember Eli was pivotal and saying like, hey, look, Crystal, like you at least need to get a couple of rounds in, which was a really good, because typically, you know, I was like on Saturdays, either all or nothing. And, you know, after, if you're a beginner and you try to roll like 8 hard rounds, like that's going to be way too much. So as a beginner, you have to build up your tolerance to jiu-jitsu by taking this kind of like stagnated or buildable approach to slowly add in stuff. And I would highly recommend keeping 1 day of lifting in there, like on a Saturday. So yeah, so that way, I mean, the intensity. So let's see. Rolling is orange. So if this is class, and the thing is too, when you're a beginner, the intensity that you feel from class is going to be less than somebody more experienced. So just give yourself a break there. Like, everything is going to feel more intense to you as a beginner. So that's why as a beginner, like, try to listen to your body and try to, you know, I have a story coming up about something that recently happened to me that's going to be, yeah, that highlights this. But you have to make sure that you're balancing how much you train and how much stress is going on with how much recovery is happening. And recovery, like the number one thing that you need to focus on is your sleep. That's number one. Diet. And then your mental too. Like, if you have a stressful job, if you recently had kids, if you have young kids, like this is all like the mental, actually this would be, mental can either be a stress or recovery. So like, if you have like stresses up here, you need to balance it with recovery down there. Do you get what I'm saying? All right. So what do I do? How do I train now? Right? The question is, how do I train now, and what would I do differently if I was a white belt again? All right. So this is how I was recently training for the past 3 months. So on Mondays, I went in, it was like about 6 p.m. and I helped with the women's class. So we had a women's class, then I went into escapes and counters. So that was another class. And then after that, I had Muay Thai and Muay Thai sparring. Then the next day I had intermediate Jiu Jitsu and then advanced Jiu Jitsu. The next day I had judo. And then after that I took the Muay Thai. Over here was advanced Muay Thai, over here was regular Muay Thai. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Thursday, what the hell was on Thursday? Thursday was another jiu-jitsu class, and then Saturday was, I would go in for drilling for like about an hour. I would take the Saturday class, and then there would be like an hour of hard rolling. So that was my schedule for, and I would try to lift like 1 day a week in here. So that was my schedule for 3 months. And then Daisy Fresh came out, and all of a sudden the Escapes and Counters class became basically like king and queen of the mat, where we would have a position of, let's say, mount, and try to stay in that mount position with people challenging us. So basically this right here, this class went from a class to pretty hard rolling, okay? And then the class of my advanced Muay Thai, like there was sparring. Then like other classes, like I remember on a Thursday, instead of basically having a class, he would be like, hey, look, let's just all roll. So I had a dramatically increased level of intensity in my training, and I was so hard-headed that I didn't want to give anything up. Like I was like, I need to continue training at this pace, because if I don't, that means I'm weak, or I don't know what was going, like I just couldn't not stop with the schedule. And what eventually happened was I noticed and this is on top of like working and making YouTube and all, you know, the other stresses of life. So what I noticed was I was not excited to go to class. In fact, I was very angry going to class for no reason. I was just like in an angry mood. After class, especially on Mondays, like after spending, you know, I would be there for like 3.5 hours, I would drive home and like just get in the shower and want to cry, basically. Like emotionally, I could tell that it was too much. So if you are training and you notice that your emotions are telling you something, like there's your sign. And then the final sign happened. It was a Thursday and we were rolling, and this new person came in and he seemed like, you know, pretty cool enough. And so I was like, hey, let's roll. And we started rolling, and he basically, like, I was trying to pass and my head was down, and he took both my arms like in back of me. And that position, just my neck did not like. It was already kind of sore from the get-go. And like, I had such intense pain that I was like screaming all the way home, and I could not move for like 24 hours without excruciating pain. So that was my other sign. So basically, if you are overtraining, you will feel it emotionally. You will start to sleep less. And you will most likely, sooner or later, your body will give you the big middle finger and be like, the weakest part will break first. And for me, that was right here, which I've been working on strengthening. So if I were to do it all over again, if I were to do a couple, you know, like the past 3 months all over again, I would definitely drop some of these classes and I would pick up another day or two of lifting. That way I can maintain my strength, because if you do not lift and your strength goes out the window, your ability to resist injury like also goes out the window. And training when you're not strong is not fun. All right, like that's like we don't do that. So if I were to change anything as a beginner, and my advice to you would be to start off with class twice a week and see how your body feels. From there, you can add in some drilling, and what I would recommend too is drill with incrementally increasing intensity, meaning your partner isn't just going to give it to you, be like, hey, let's do this technique. All right, give me 10% resistance, give me 20% fight, give me 30, and keep on doing that until you reach the breaking point of when your move doesn't work anymore. And then that way you can figure it out when you're not in the middle of a tornado-like roll. From there, I would say, all right, like replace some of the drilling with just a couple of rounds, like 1 to 3 rounds after your class. That way it's not an intense, like 8-9 round rolling session. That way you can get acclimated to it. Because now I obviously can handle a shit ton more than I could when I first started, and I only was able to do 2 classes a week because it was like so intense on my body until I figured out what to do to recover, to actively recover. Like in jiu-jitsu, you actually have to try to recover actively. Like sitting on the couch watching Netflix or whatever it's some mental recovery if you're watching like some comedy, but like physically you're just gonna get tight and it's not gonna be fun. So I'm so happy to like share this video with you, to help you out. If you have any questions, I love reading your comments. They're like really, really great. But just think, okay, if this top part is stress and this bottom part is recovery, how much stress is going on, right? Versus how much recovery. And this is the balancing act that you need, and you can practice your jiu-jitsu with less stress by implementing drilling. But drilling can make your jiu-jitsu not realistic if there is no resistance applied, because a completely willing participant is not realistic when you're fighting. Like that's the definition of fighting. They're going to fight you. So drilling with resistance is going to be your best friend. What you can also do is decrease the intensity of rolling. So what this is called is flow rolling. So if you want to get into rolling and you find you are too sore to do so, one thing that you could ask an upper belt to do is flow roll, which is basically a lower intensity type roll where you're basically just trying to move. Now this creates its challenges for a white belt, because white belts tend to freak out and overgrip and just freak out on the mat. So as a white belt, like this can be difficult, but if you're very mindful and just try to flow, then it'll work for you. And of course, as a beginner, you might be like, I don't even know many moves. How could I even do this? Well, put 3 moves together during your drilling, that you can then just practice those 3 moves during your flow roll. So I would recommend something like an escape, like a side control escape. A side control escape plus stepping up an increase in your ladder position. Like let's say you escape side control and then you go to a side turtle, and then you do that move where you're basically like sliding in and pulling them on basically taking their back from a side turtle position. There's a bunch of combinations that you can do, but I would recommend starting with a side control escape and then improving a technique that improves your position, and then finally finishing. which is always fun. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. Yeah, right? Not so. All right, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you have not subscribed, I think we should be friends and you should subscribe. If you found this helpful, leave me a comment, you know, give me a little thumbs up, leave a little black heart in the comments so I know that you made it through this video. And until next time, bye. And you might also ask, Crystal, how are you training through your injury? So basically, I have limited the amount of classes that I attend to 1 class per day instead of like 1 to 3. So I limited my classes to 1 class per day. And then on Saturdays, instead of rolling, I ask for flow rolls, and I only ask people that I completely know and trust, because some people literally do not know how to flow roll, and it's like, you know, it's a trust thing. Like, somebody could injure me, like re-injure me if I'm coming back from an injury. It's very easy to re-injure yourself. So I cut back on my training. You know, the week that I had got injured and like the next week coming back, I basically started with like 1 class per week. And then, okay, let's do 2 classes. All right, now let's do lifting since I can totally control that. Let's add in a couple of days of lifting with class. So yeah, so I basically tried to either do class or lift 3 days a week. And then build upon that to now I can, you know, a couple weeks later, I'm doing class every day and flow rolling. And then also during the Muay Thai class, I'm doing a little bit of sparring. So it's basically just like starting like you're a beginner again and building up. So this is useful both if you're a beginner trying to increase your volume while still maintaining that you need to keep in mind longevity. You want to train for a long time. If you mess up your machine to the point of it, you can't fix it, like then you're up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. So you want to be able to make sure that you're training for sustainability and longevity and know how to use this to both increase your training volume as a beginner or know how to increase your training volume if you're trying to come back from an injury. Which is very useful. All right. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time. Bye.